Dear student, now we will discuss absorption of food. So, what is absorption? The digested food which is present in the lumen of a small intestine is transported to the main bloodstream. So, how that occurs, this complete process is called absorption of food. So, digested food consists of monosaccharide, amino acid, fatty acids, small peptides, mineral, vitamins, everything. By different transport mechanism, they are transported to the bloodstream either via capillaries or lacteals associated with villi. And different transport mechanism includes diffusion, active transport, facilitated diffusion, or transport, and passive transport. Okay. So now after they enter the villi or blood capillaries, so now they are carried by the hepatic portal vein to the liver, and all the nutrient go to the liver. This is called enterohepatic circulation, and from the liver they enter the general circulation. So here I'll be discussing absorption, how the monosaccharide get absorbed. So glucose and galactose, they have same mechanism. Even the amino acid, they have the same mechanism of transport. They transport via active transport, which is known as sodium glucose co-transport mechanism, or called SIMPORT, SGLT1. Fructose via sodium dependent facilitated diffusion, and the rate of absorption is 3 to 6 times lower than glucose. Pentose are absorbed by passive diffusion. Okay, now we'll see how it occurs. So first we'll just discuss the sodium glucose co-transport system, that is SGLT. And since the glucose which is formed in the lumen cannot be transported alone, and its transport is always with the sodium, so it is depending on the sodium. So this system is called sodium dependent glucose co-transport, means simultaneously both the molecule of sodium and glucose are transported from the lumen to the intestinal cells. Now glucose moves from the lumen to the enterocytes, mucosal cells, that is via active transport. Now what is active transport? Is the process of moving the molecule across the cellular membrane through the use of cellular energy. Active transport is usually associated with accumulating high concentration of molecules that the cell need, such as ions, glucose, amino acids. Okay, so they are all actively transported. It occurs in the duodenum and upper part of jejunum. The glucose is co-transported with sodium during absorption. Intestinal lumen has high concentration of sodium ion as compared to the mucosal cells. So therefore what will happen? The sodium along with the glucose moves from lumen to mucosal cells, and this is called symport because both are moving in same direction. Co-transport as both move, so this is also known as co-transport. Sodium gradient is the immediate source of energy for the glucose transport. When sodium ion come back to its original position, it is against the concentration gradient, so it requires energy. So here sodium potassium pump is operated, and sodium moves in exchange with potassium pump. So glucose transporter that is used in the enterocytes are SGLT1, which is a transmembrane protein as located in the membrane and causes. So you can see SGLT, this is a transmembrane protein. Okay, this is lumen, these are enterocytes. From glucose from here get transported to the enterocyte, and simultaneously the sodium from the lumen will move here. So both are moving at the same time. So this is called co-transport because this moves with this, and they same move simultaneously in one direction, so it is called symport. Now the glucose come, and from here the glucose from the enterocyte diffuse to the blood capillaries and enter the bloodstream. So from here the villi are in the capillaries which are there in the villi, they diffuse in the capillaries and enter the general circulation after it enters the liver. Now what happens to the sodium? The sodium moves back to the lumen. So when it moves back to the lumen, it is against the concentration gradient, because here the concentration of sodium is more as compared to here. So automatically, because of this gradient, there was energy because of which they move here, so they don't require any extra ATP. But when the sodium has to move in this direction, it is against the concentration gradient. Okay, so it will be requiring ATP. So this moves through the sodium potassium pump. So in the sodium potassium pump, there is a transmembrane protein called ATPase, and this simultaneously moves out the potassium and in the out the sodium and in the potassium ion. So per cycle operated, 3 sodium moves out and 2 potassium moves in the opposite direction. So this is how the system operated in case of glucose transport. Galactose amino acids are also transported through the same mechanism. Okay, now we'll just look at the fat. What happens to the fats? Fat are hydrophobic, so they form micelles. Okay, now there are two different things happen with the fat. One is that they form micelles, another one is that they form chylomicron. So micelles are the globules of fat reduced, in which they are arranged in the spherical form in the aqueous solution, where the fatty acids are toward inside and hydrophilic part toward the outside. So after digestion, micelles are formed because they combine with the bile. Okay, and now no after the action of lipase, whatever fatty acids are there, they form the micelles, and these micelles are absorbed by the capillaries because they are small structures. So they are absorbed in the capillaries directly. But certain fats such as triglyceride, cholesterol, phospholipid, they together form chylomicron. Okay, so the long chain triglyceride, they especially form chylomicron in enterocytes and enters the lacteals. So they don't enter the blood capillaries, but they enter the lacteals, as they cannot enter the blood capillaries due to the large size. The lacteal join the lymphatic vessel and later on join the bloodstream. Now chylomicron actually are the lipoprotein that consist of core made up of triglyceride and cholesterol, and the coat which is made up of phospholipid and protein. So in the chylomicron, they get absorbed to the lacteals, which is lymphatic vessels, and then from the lymphatic vessels they join the bloodstream. Okay, so if you understand here, fat emulsified, then resynthesis of fat occurs, small size get absorbed, and the large size in the form of chylomicron get absorbed by the lacteals. So when they enter the lacteals, the fat is now known as chyle because it combines with the lymph. So lymph plus chylomicron is called chyle, and it appears milky. Okay, so if you see the absorption of other things like vitamins, vitamin B12, we have already discussed, absorbed in the ileum and associated with Cassell's intrinsic factor. Fat soluble vitamins are absorbed through the chylomicron. Water and mineral are absorbed throughout the intestine, small intestine and large intestine. 90% of the water is absorbed in small intestine, and the water is undigested. In the undigested food is absorbed through the large intestine. If you take the water without food, it get absorbed from the stomach, and during the dehydration also the water is directly absorbed from the stomach. Certain ions like iron absorb in the duodenum by osmosis, bicarbonate ion absorbed by the active transport. After that, whatever is the undigested food is actually ejected out of the body and through these large intestine, because the undigested food enters the large intestine, and the large intestine absorb most of the water and electrolyte from the undigested food, and it also causes fermentation of this food by the bacteria which resides in the colon. Symbiotically they resides in the colon, and they causes fermentation of undigested food. So, and presence of bile pigment add color to the feces. The egestion of feces is voluntary process and carried out by the peristaltic movement. So here we complete the digestion and absorption of food. Thank you.